Welcome to whatever this is going to be. So I wanted to create a space basically where I could just sit down and yap without the pressure of having to do like loads of aesthetic clips for YouTube and make those YouTube videos. I love making those YouTube videos, by the way. I just don't always have the time to sit down and kind of curate all of these ideas and try and get all the clips edited and color grading and stuff. And it's more just for funsies than anything else. But it also means because it takes up so much time and it takes all day basically to film those videos. I still really like them and I'll still do them for sure. But I just wanted to also kind of put out a little space where I can just sit down and yap and it's just press record and go. And it doesn't have to be a whole like thing or whatever. So that's what this is. I'm going to put the audio on Spotify and I'm going to put the video on YouTube on the exact same channel. I'm not going to make a new channel just for like the Yap videos. I'm just going to keep all the videos in the same space because I could not be bothered to make another new YouTube channel and then like keep things separated. Everything can just kind of be messy. Nobody cares. And that's one of the best things about like when you're starting off doing something and you haven't got a like clear defined presence on a certain platform or whatever, you can kind of do whatever you want and nobody is paying attention. So you can literally do whatever you want. And even if people are paying attention and you do have a clear defined presence on a social media, you can still do whatever the fuck you want because nobody cares. Literally nobody fucking cares. So that's what this is. And yeah, I just wanted to sit down and have a yap basically. And I realized over the last like couple of years, I have been sending so many voice notes to my friends, and the amount of times that there's just like these nuggets of gold in those voice notes and the messages that we send to each other, and yeah, just the clarity and the wisdom in those messages. I'm like, these should be recorded and put somewhere because yeah, anyway, so that's what this is. And I've definitely felt that a lot over the last couple of weeks. The amount of voice notes I send to my friends, yeah, they should be put somewhere. So that's what this is. Just kind of the same flavor of voice notes that I would send to my friends, but instead of sending it just to one person, just put it out there and whoever wants to listen can listen. And yeah, so that's what this is. And also, so many times over the past like 5 years, 6 years, since 2019, everyone has been saying to me, you need to start a podcast, you need to start a podcast. And even my brother a couple of years ago was like, I'm going to get you set up and I'm going to like invest in your podcast and get you all set up. And I was like, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what to say. I'm shy when I could yap for Ireland. If there was one thing I was put on this earth to do, it is to fucking talk uninterrupted by myself. Go. I can do that. I can absolutely do that. But then when I think about all the times in the past when I was like, right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to just sit down and I'm actually going to do it. I'm actually going to do it. I'm so fucking glad that I didn't, now that I think about it. And whenever I had all the energy and the like motivation and the drive to actually start a podcast, the person who was the loudest in me, the part of me that was the loudest at those times, was like a really angry bitch. And not that I think that my angry bitch part is wrong. I don't think that she's wrong. She's just not the loudest part of me anymore. And I still agree with her though. But however, I don't want to have an entire space dedicated to like all of these reasons to be angry and like all of these reasons to be fucking like miserable and stuff. And it's like, blah, no, not interested anymore. I'm not going to further victimize myself and further keep myself kind of pushed down and keep myself small. No, thank you. No, thank you. My angry bitch is still there. I'm still a fucking bitch, but she is definitely not the loudest part of me anymore. So she doesn't need to be starting podcasts or anything like that. I actually think if that part of me, or if that person, the 2019 version of me or the 2020 version of me did start a podcast, I would have just fucking deleted it anyway. So whatever, it wouldn't have existed right now anyway, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, when I was, all of those times, anytime that I did get this like rush of motivation or rush of like, yeah, let's do it, I would go and check I'd have like a list of names that I like. Every single one of those fucking names was taken. And it's always by a podcast who like set up their podcast in like 2017, created 3 or 4 episodes, and then like never posted ever again. So the name's still taken though. But anyway, so it doesn't matter. So that's why I was always like, my name's taken. I can't possibly do anything because the name that I want is taken. And yeah, basically that's why I picked this name, because all the other names that I wanted were taken. So the name of this on Spotify is going to be Do Less, Fall Behind. And that is something that I said on Instagram years ago, because someone was talking to me about somatics and nervous system regulation, and they gave me I used to do a lot of Q&As on Instagram, and that is basically how I connected with people the most. I haven't done one properly in like a year and a half, because I feel it's weird paying attention to everything that's going on in Palestine and posting about that, and then also being like, who needs advice? Who wants to talk about relationships? Who wants to talk about nervous system regulation? When so I just have taken a kind of a step back from engaging with people and putting myself kind of out there in that way, because it felt wrong to do. It felt really, really, really wrong to do. And I know that it wouldn't have been wrong for me to do that. But it just felt wrong for me in particular to do that. So I just haven't done that. And I feel now is the time where I can kind of start doing that again. And that's basically what I'm doing right now, this second. I'm doing that. But I've been sitting down here at this desk for the last 3 days trying to figure out what the fuck is wrong with my laptop, because every time I recorded something, I've already recorded this a couple times, by the way. This is like the 3rd time that I'm recording this. But every single other time that I recorded it, the playback was so bad. The playback was so bad that I couldn't edit it, because I couldn't actually see anything, because it was just so choppy and laggy. And it would be like every 7 seconds, there would be like a clip, and then another 7 seconds, and then another, like, I felt like I think that's how pigeons see. I think they only see every like 2 or 3 seconds, which is why they like fly into you if you walk past them. But I think that might be a lie. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's what the playback was like on my laptop, and I couldn't figure it out. I ended up the last 2 or 3 days, I've just been like clearing everything off my laptop and trying to create as much space as possible. I thought it was my memory or my storage or my disk space or whatever. So now my laptop is empty, and that feels really nice. But guess how I actually solved the problem? You'll never guess. Turning my laptop off and then turning it back on again solved the problem. And I probably should have done that on Monday when this started happening. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's Wednesday. It is 20 to 2 p.m. It's really nice outside. It's such a nice day. And I am able to sit down and have a yap now, and my computer's working and everything's fine. And everything, camera working, microphone working, laptop working, blah, 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 blah. Everything's perfect. So the reason why I called this little space, this little yap session, Do Less, Fall Behind, is because every time I work with someone, I'm a somatic therapist, and I work with people who are dysregulated. Most of the people who I work with are recovering from like toxic, abusive relationships, and they also have a terrible relationship with themselves. So that is basically like the most common denominator between everyone that I've worked with. And those are the people who I can help. People who have had relational trauma and people who have a bad relationship with themselves. That's how I help. That's who I help. And most of the time, and I have completely fallen into this trap as well, of overcomplicating the process of regulation. It's not always easy, but it can be quite simple. It doesn't have to be really complicated, but that doesn't mean that it's always easy to do, and it's always easy to apply, if that makes sense. So when I work with people, and even recognizing these parts of myself, especially from the past, when I would put so much pressure on myself to constantly be improving, constantly be adding things into my routine with the goal of regulating myself or like healing myself or whatever. And if the goal is regulation, if that's the goal, that we want to be a regulated person or we want to regulate our emotions, doing more and constantly throwing things on top of this pile of needing to fix ourselves and needing to better ourselves and all of these like strict routines and this hustle culture that has kind of seeped its way into the healing space and into the wellness kind of space and into the therapy space. It is the worst thing to do if the goal is regulation. That is just going to keep us dysregulated. This like endless pressure, this endless urgency to regulate ourselves and to optimize our time and energy and always be productive and always focus on fixing something. That is not how we regulate. And maybe it does work for some people. So I don't want to speak in absolutes because I don't know everything. And I don't know everyone. So maybe there are people out there that are like, no, I did regulate myself by waking up at 3 a.m. and doing 4-hour ice baths and having Joe Rogan regurgitate elk meat into my mouth from his weird fucking stomach and having Andrew Huberman take 2 hours to tell me exactly what order I should take my supplements in while he was also trying to get like 4 girls pregnant or whatever. I don't know what he did. He did something weird. I can't remember, but maybe there are people out there who do a lot of like habit stacking and they do a lot of strict routining and they have that rigid structure around themselves and it does help them. Maybe there are people out there. There's people out there that works for. I would probably feel like that works better for men. And I would guess that most people who are going to listen to this are not men. So if you are a man and you're here, you're welcome here. But I'm just going to talk to the girls for a sec. Most of the regulation, most of the nervous system based stuff that we see online, on TikTok, being talked about is centered around male hormones and male bodies. It probably has not even been tested on women. A lot of the stuff that we see, this regulates your nervous system. This is how you get into parasympathetic, blah, blah, blah. All that kind of stuff that you see online by people talking about it. Most of that stuff is not taking the female body into consideration and the female hormone cycle into consideration at all. Some of those things might work, but they might work while you're ovulating, but they might not work while you're going into your menstruation or when you're coming into luteal or follicular. This is what I mean when I'm saying that most of the nervous system based healing stuff that's out there is not centered to the woman's body. So if you are a woman or someone, if you are a woman and you have a female hormone cycle, and you have fallen into the trap of putting loads of pressure on yourself, having a really strict routine, having that like hustle culture energy in your wellness routine. If you've fallen into that trap, I'm not saying if you've fallen into that trap. If you're doing that currently and you're noticing that it isn't working for you, there could be a better way to do things. And it involves doing less, slowing down. And if you think about it, if you're in like an emergency situation, say if you get lost in the woods and you can't find the path and you don't know where you're going, what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to run around and freak out and put loads of pressure on yourself? Or are you supposed to slow the fuck down and stop and then take time to figure out what the next plan is, or even just stay where you are so people can come and find you? That would probably be a better option than just like running around being all crazy. But I'm not here to tell you what to do. If you want to run around, if you want to run around and be crazy, go do that. I'm not here to tell you what to do. But anyway, this endless pressure to keep doing more and throwing more things into the wellness or regulation pile does the exact opposite of what we want it to do. So that is why I said do less. The fall behind thing is kind of a joke because I don't even think we can ever be behind in our own life. We can feel like we are behind when we're comparing ourselves to other people or when we're thinking about where we should be. I'm 33, I should be here, I should be there, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. Instead of just like, well, I'm not there. and nobody is telling me that I need to be there, except, I don't know, maybe if you've got like really awful parents, or maybe like standards of society or whatever. But who's actually telling you that you should be there? Most of the time it's just ourselves. It's just like that inner dialogue, that shame. Anytime we feel or we hear the word should, or we say the word should to ourselves, it's a really, really, really big sign that we're actually shaming ourselves. And I'm not here for shame-based healing or shame-based wellness whatsoever. And also, just another thing about shame, the perfectionism and the strict routines are shame-based healing. Needing to be perfect, needing to show up perfectly, needing to have a perfect routine is shame-based healing. Saying to yourself, I'm going to get 10,000 steps minimum every single fucking day. And then inevitably we're going to miss a day here and there. And then to make yourself feel like a really big piece of shit because you missed a day and you didn't get 10,000 steps, you only got 6,000 steps. That's all shame-based healing. And that can work for some people. That absolutely can work for some people. But for most people that I know, and for myself and anyone that I've worked with, it doesn't fucking work. And most people who work with me are used to shaming themselves. They're used to operating from this like shame-based system, and they want to try something a little bit slower, something a little bit softer, something a little bit more compassionate, something a little bit less toxic and shamey. But anyway, so that was the do less part. And then the fall behind part, giving ourselves permission to fall behind. Fall behind who? Fall behind what? There is nothing we could possibly be falling behind in. We might feel like, what the fuck, my jumper? We might feel like we're behind. And we might even have these goalposts in our life, or these like milestones in our life. When I'm 30, I want to be married. When I'm 35, I want to have 10 kids. When I'm 40, I want whatever the fuck, whatever. So based on our own standards, or based on our own kind of timeline that we've set up for ourselves, we might feel like we're behind, because we might actually be behind. And I think it's fine to set goals. And I think it's fine to have some sort of containment. I think when there's no boundaries, or when there's no containment, if you're like a creative person, or if you are self-employed and you don't have a boss like breathing down your neck, you can just get lost forever in the kind of possibilities. And when there's no parameters, and when there's no container, when there's no borders, it can kind of get a little bit fragmented and all over the place. So I think it is a good idea to have some form of containment as a creative person and as a self-employed person, to have like, I'm not going to put these strict rules on myself, but I am going to give myself a bit of a loose timeline, or a bit of a loose kind of goalposts. But that is not me or you being in competition. That would not be us like being in competition with ourselves, or being in competition with other people, because you literally can't really be in competition with other people, because there is no one perfect ultimate truth. There's no one ultimate path that suits absolutely everybody. It's completely non-linear. The path that everyone is taking, or the path that we're on. Sometimes there's people who are on a similar path and they're further ahead than us. And sometimes there's people who are a little bit behind us, and we're all kind of on some sort of similar path. But most of the time, I'm on this path, I'm over here, you're on your path over there, and we can see each other. And I'm not wrong for being over here, and you're not wrong for being over there. But we're not in a race with each other. There is no race. There is no race. There is no urgency. And yeah, so that's why I said fall behind, because there is no behind. There is no falling behind, because there's no race. There's absolutely no race. And again, this rush, this urgency that we put on ourselves most of the time, it just creates an illusion that we are being more productive, or that we're actually getting there faster, but we're not. We're not. The most beneficial thing we can do when it comes to actual forward momentum is to lean back and slow down and orient to where we are, so that we know where we're going. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. I feel like I'm just kind of having a yap and just explaining the name of the title or whatever, and where I got the name from. So I don't think that people should stay the same forever. I think it's perfectly okay to have goals, and I think it's perfectly okay to like want to do better, and to want to improve certain things, and to want to regulate, and to want to like heal or release certain things, or create the capacity for other things. I think it's completely normal and human and healthy to want to improve, but not from a place of like, I'm so fucked up and I need to fix everything. Like, not from that place. That's super shamey, but from a place of like, this isn't necessarily the best way to operate. And I know that there are better things that I could do for myself. I know that there are ways for me to be more regulated and to act more calm and to not be so reactive and to not be such a fucking bitch all the time. And I know that there's better ways to operate. So that's why I want to do that out of love for myself. So I'm not here to say that like you can't improve or you can't want to do better or whatever, because we're all kind of trying our best and we're all, probably most of us, trying to do at least a little bit better, even 1% better every year. That still matters. But the competition aspect of it, of being in a race and being in competition with each other and like scoring points and constantly comparing ourselves to other people, it's like, no. I'm definitely not into that whatsoever. And even like I've seen like captions on Instagram from like fitness people being like, the only person you're in competition with is the person in the mirror. And I am not in competition with the person in the mirror at all. I have fought so fucking hard for so long to love that person in the mirror. I am not in competition with her. She's my bestie. What are you talking about? That's my bestie. She's not my competition. And I think it's okay as well to say, wow, I'm handling this situation so much better than I would have 10 years ago. I think it's okay to say that. And I don't think that is a competitive thing. I think it's just like a noticing it's working. The healing that I'm doing or the regulation work or whatever that I'm doing is working. I am handling this situation so much better than I would have in the past. So again, I'm not trying to be someone who's like, don't ever try and improve yourself, or don't ever try and work on your mindset or do anything. I'm like, no, I'm always doing that kind of stuff, but from a different place. I'm not doing it from a place of hatred towards myself or a place of shame towards myself. I'm doing it because I want to. I don't want to stay in this place forever. I know that there's other things out there for me that I need to like expand into, but it's also, somatics helped me a lot with this as well. The pendulation and the kind of swaying, instead of being like rigid and instead of being so strict and so contained, allowing myself to kind of really tune into my body and tune into my cycle and work cyclically. Because, oh, the cat, look at the cat. Oh, one sec, I'll go let him in a sec. Okay, but somatics helped me. Oh, I better go let him in because he wants to. Okay, so somatics definitely helped me work with my body rather than against my body, and to tune into my body and to understand like my body is saying no for a reason. My body is telling me to take a rest, and by ignoring my body's needs, I'm basically telling my body no, and I'm basically telling my body that I'm not listening to you. You're not important. What you need is not important. So when we're trying to heal and regulate ourselves and we're not listening to our bodies and we're not respecting our bodies when our bodies are saying no, we're basically telling ourselves that we don't matter. I hear you and I'm ignoring you and you do not matter. How is that going to regulate us? How is that going to do anything to help us heal or regulate or come into a place of safety? We're doing the exact opposite. We're basically saying, yeah, I hear you, but like, I have to go sit in this ice bath for 5 minutes. No, absolutely not. And I like ice baths, by the way. I do like ice baths, but for most people, they are massively dysregulating. For most women, they're massively dysregulating. So if you are someone, come up. If you are someone who tried the ice bath thing and it didn't work for you, don't feel bad. It's really dysregulating for most people. But well, I was talking about something. Stop. I was talking about something there. Oh yeah. So when we are thinking about like improving ourselves or bettering ourselves, we always have to remember that we are nature. We are not, I suppose like the subconscious would probably be kind of computery and programmable and stuff. So we're kind of half computer, but we're also half nature. I would say actually we're probably 75% nature and then 25% computer. And I think our subconscious could be the computer part, or the part that we can kind of alter and program and bloop, 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 bloop. But our cycles, our bodies, our hormones, our nervous systems is very naturey. So in nature, it's never 100% of the time. Nothing grows 100% of the time, is what I'm trying to say. I'm just going around it in a real backwards way. Nothing grows 100% of the time. And again, somatics really helps me kind of lean into this with the kind of like growth and rest and growth and rest. When is the time for growth and acceleration, forward movement and expansion? There is going to be a time for that. And there is time when we are more supported when we're moving forward. There is time. Like, think about when you're ovulating. We have way more energy. We have way more motivation. We have way more enthusiasm. We have more energy. We have more energy for that forward momentum and for those energy, for that like kind of fertileness to like birth some ideas into reality. But there's also time to lean back, and there's time for a decay, and there's time for a rot, or to turn ourselves into a big pile, a big heap of compost, and to let ourselves kind of rot and decompose, and to let some parts of ourselves turn into the compost and fall off and become part of the ecosystem or whatever, and then to kind of help germinate the ground and put all the nutrients and stuff in the soil so that other parts can grow and sprout. So there's always that sway. It's never going to be one or the other. You're never going to be 100% of the time rotting. And if you do feel like you are 100% of the time rotting, that is a problem. And there is things that you can do to kind of leave the compost heap and come into a germination and come into a sprout. So does that make sense? There's time for growth. There's time for acceleration and expansion. There's time for forward momentum, but then there's also time to come back, and there's time to rot and sink in and like let everything kind of fall off and hit the ground, and what needs to fall off and what needs to grow and sprout. So that's kind of how I approach my business. That's how I approach my energy levels. That's how I approach my gym. That's how I approach my like healing or my regulation work. Sometimes it's time to push forward, and sometimes it's time to lean back. And it's always kind of pendulating between those two. Anyway, the one last thing I'm going to say about regulation is, if your goal is to regulate yourself, and if your goal is, sorry, my laptop is running out of battery. If your goal is regulation, and if your goal is like healing or whatever, just to know that there's no such thing as like always being regulated. The goal is never to be perfectly calm and perfectly regulated all the time. That doesn't exist. If someone is really calm and perfect all the time, I know from experience, I've met those people. They are lying. They're fake. They're literally fake, and they cannot allow themselves to express anger, or they cannot actually allow themselves to feel those feelings because they don't have the capacity for it, or they think it's like low vibe or whatever. Those people they're not my flavor. Let's just say I like someone who can express honest, authentic emotions, whether they are positive or negative. So if your goal is regulation, just know that it's completely normal to feel triggered and to be dysregulated. The goal of somatics, or the goal of healing, or the goal of regulation, whatever you want to call it, is not to never feel dysregulated, not to never feel triggered, but to be able to come back to that place of regulation, to get the spikes of dysregulation or the spikes of being triggered or whatever it is, but then return back to that place of safety, return back to that place of regulation. That is the goal. The goal is not to be perfectly calm and regulated all the time, because we are complex. Humans are complex, and we're always coming into contact with each other. There's always going to be things out there that trigger us. There's always going to be external people and external conversations and world events and politics that are going to be very triggering. That's okay. We're going to be able to like build a capacity for that eventually, and then come back to a place of regulation. So I was even going to say, I used to have this thing where it's like, unless we move to like the Himalayas and we live in an ashram with loads of monks, then people are going to be really triggering. I know monks who live in ashrams in the Himalayas, and they all piss each other off as well. They all get really triggered by each other. Even though they're just meditating all day and like looking after their cows or whatever, they still talk shit about each other, and they still get massively triggered by each other. So even if you live in the Himalayas and you're a monk, you still get dysregulated and you still get really triggered. And actually, I got really triggered earlier, but I won't tell the full story because I won't say details or whatever, but I got really triggered earlier. But because I have worked with this particular trigger for a long time, I've worked with this trigger for a long time. When it started happening in my body and when I could feel the trigger in my body, it actually turned into more of it was more fun because I was like, what is this? Like, why is this still here? What is it teaching me? And it turned into more of a like internal playground because the person was talking and I was getting triggered by them and what they were telling me. And 5, 6, 7 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to handle that. I would have been like, stop talking. I cannot handle the feeling that's arising in my body because of you and what you're saying. But today I was able to talk to that person and like lean back into my spine a little bit, like take a little bit of like space, take a little bit of mental space and take a little bit of physical space by leaning back into my spine. And when we think about our spine is secure and solid and stable, and it's like a structure. And leaning back and being able to feel your spine, we're going back into safety and we're going back into security. And when we think about the front of our body, our hearts, our throat, our face, our organs, everything vulnerable is kind of at the front. So if you're like facing someone and they're making you feel triggered, when you lean back into your back body, you're moving your vulnerable parts away from them, even just like an inch or two. You're moving it away from them. You're kind of reclaiming a little bit of space and you're kind of putting a bit of distance. You're protecting all of your vulnerable parts and you're leaning back into your spine. So that's what I did. That all happens. I don't even have to think about that anymore because I've practiced it so much that it just comes naturally to me. And it comes naturally to people that I work with as well. It comes naturally to anyone who just practices it over and over again. You don't have to be special. I'm not special. I've just been practicing all this kind of stuff for a long time. But anyway, this person was triggering me and I leaned back, still engaged in the conversation. I leaned back into the safety of my spine and feeling all of these triggers arise in me. And I was like, what is happening? What is happening in my body? Again, this would have spiraled me. This would have sent me into a spiral just a couple of years ago. But today it actually just made me laugh. And even though I was feeling triggered and even though those triggers were still active in my body, I was able to find the humor in it all, and I was able to just, it was really funny. It actually was really funny. I can't tell the full story, and now I probably shouldn't have mentioned anything. But anyway, it was funny, and it gets to be funny. It gets to be easy. Lean back into the spine. I'm going to end this here because my computer's going to run out of battery. And I will post another one soon. So if you want to watch me yap, I'm going to upload on YouTube. And if you just want to hear me yap, I'm going to upload onto Spotify. So thank you for listening to whatever the fuck this was. I will have more of a like structure going forward. Actually, maybe I won't. Maybe there's no structure. Maybe it is just sit down and yap. And I'm going to also ask more questions on Instagram so I can give more detailed answers. So I'm not like so rushed giving the answers, sorry, on Instagram. I'll be able to like actually have a bit more space and have a bit more freedom with the answers. So anyway, I'll leave this here and I will see you on the next video or whatever. Bye bye.